We're going to start Parak Chav Dalet, chapter 24. On the top, it's 58. At the bottom is page 100. Okay, until now, in chapter 18, the Alter Rebbe was explaining that it's very easy and close for a person to do Torah mitzvahs. Okay? And he explained the greatness of mitzvahs. And then the Alter Rebbe explained, okay, he said, chapter 18 began to explain how really it's close and easy. And then the Alter Rebbe started explaining about the neshama. And then he started explaining about the greatness of Torah and the greatness of mitzvahs. That every sin is really idol worshiping. And therefore, the two first mitzvahs, I am God, your God. You should not have any other gods. Positive and negative is a source of all positive mitzvahs. So the Alter Rebbe was explaining that when you do mitzvahs, especially when you learn Torah, which is even greater, you connect to Hashem. And he explained that it's not, you don't have to reach a super level of fear. The observance of the mitzvah, observance of learning Torah, connects you to Hashem unbelievably. Now the Alter Rebbe is going to explain the reverse. What happens when you sin? Because in order to understand the battle between good and bad, we have to understand what you accomplish by doing a mitzvah in the positive way and the negativity of what happens when you commit a sin. So the Alter Rebbe is going to start by saying now, just like in mitzvahs, you connect to Hashem. When you sin, you have a total disconnect from Hashem. And that's what he starts off by saying. When one is opposite the next, and like we learned in Perek Vav, the Alter Rebbe also said Zelu Mezeh, meaning if there's 10 levels of Kedusha in the Neshama, there has to be 10 levels of evil in the animal soul. It has to be balanced to be able to have free choice to do good or bad. You have to know what you're doing. So he says like this. The opposite of Kedusha is the 365 negative commandments, the Eraisa, which are biblical, the Choli Surid Rabbanon, and all rabbinic prohibitions. We know the Chachamim made fences around the Torah, and they instituted certain decrees that you're not allowed to do. Give you an example. Biblically, only beef and milk is biblically forbidden. Chicken and milk is only rabbinically forbidden because the chicken doesn't have milk of its mother. So therefore, but it's still forbidden rabbinically. So he says like this. Because any negative commandment, Hashem says, don't do it. Don't think it, don't say it, don't do it. Is against the will of Hashem and against his wisdom. It's not only against, but it's actually the opposite of the will of Hashem. Then a person who transgresses a negative commandment, whether it's biblical or rabbinic, is completely separated from the unity and the oneness of Hashem, with the ultimate separation, just like Sitra Achra and Klipa, okay, just like evil, which is called Avodah Zarah, like you explained before, Valokim Achedim, and other gods, meaning from the external over the shoulder side, Machmes has to panim shodotz and aliyim because of the concealment of. Let me preface what Alter Rebbe is going to be saying soon. We know that things that the Torah forbids, like let's say pig, is what's called shalosh chipsat tameis. We learned before in the earlier chapters. Anything Hashem forbids is total evil. When a person sins, he is connecting and binding himself to total evil. That means not only is he not being connected, he's actively disconnecting himself from Hashem in a way that he's exactly like the evil. And soon the Alter Rebbe is going to explain very interestingly he's worse than the pig. A person who sins is worse than all the evil things that Hashem created as evil. Because those things, and I'm going to say it first outside, then we'll see it inside. Those things of evil, like a pig, total evil, was created that way. It is what it is because Hashem made it. It doesn't go against the will of Hashem. When a lion rips apart another animal for food, that's not the lion sinning. It's not that the lion has free choice to do it. Hashem made him in a way that that's what he does. He's highest tortifus. He's a beast that rips other animals to get his food. That's how he lives. Hashem created him that way. And therefore, when evil does what they're supposed to do, they're really doing the will of Hashem. When a person chooses to go against Hashem, that's even worse. Because what you're really doing now is you chose to go against the will of Hashem on your own free will. And Hashem didn't make you like that. Hashem made you that you can choose good over bad. And you chose bad over good. You are worse than the bad that Hashem made us bad. And now let's see this inside. The same three garments of the person, with thought, speech, and action. Shemeklipis nega should be so that by the nefesh habamis, he said before, of the Jew, comes in the neutral level of evil. Shehe machshava dibur u'mais, the thought, speech, and action. Hamlubeshes, that dresses itself into the transgressing the 365 biblical and rabbinic mitzvahs. The same thing, the essence of the nefesh. Hamlubeshes belavusheha, that dresses itself into the garments. Kulam yuchodim mamish b'sitra achad of a klipazu. They become one with evil. That's called idol worshiping. So now the Rebbe is saying, just like a mitzvah connects you in an unbelievable way, you are connected. You become the limb of Hashem. You become one with Hashem if it's Torah. The way you're unbelievably connected to Hashem, when a person sins, they disconnect with the ultimate essential disconnection. And he says, V'loy eid, not only are you connected now to evil, that you're bound to evil, you are nullified and secondary, inferior to the evil. And he says, your ma'id means infinitely. You are even infinitely worse than the evil itself that you transgressed. Hashem says, treif is no good. Okay, it's no good. It's evil. But again, Hashem made it that way. It didn't choose to be that way. A person comes now and chooses evil instead of good, meaning instead of connecting to Hashem, they choose to be disconnected. That's infinitely worse. It's not that it's in a body. It knows its creator. It doesn't rebel against God. They don't go against the will of Hashem. It's not that they know God and they don't rebel against him because this is the way Hashem made him to be. It's like Bilam, like this terrible guy Bilam. He said, I cannot go against the will of Hashem. What do you mean? He's total evil. Bilam said, evil doesn't go against the will of Hashem. Evil does what Hashem wants him to do. It's very interesting. The Rebbe explains this. You see, there seems to be a contradiction When Balak asked Bilam, I'm going off for a minute. When Balak asked Bilam to come and curse the Jews, Bilam asked Hashem. Hashem said no. So Bilam said to Balak, I can't go against the will of Hashem. I can't. He doesn't want me to curse him. I cannot go against the will of Hashem. Yet the Gemara says in Sanhedrin that Bilam had relations with his donkey on the way to bless the Jews. He had Baal al-Sinai. He had relation with his beast, which is even one of the 7 Noahide laws. So the Rebbe asked, 1 minute, Bilam here says, I cannot go against the will of Hashem. And then he has relation with a donkey, which is capital punishment for a non-Jew, by the way. It's capital punishment for a non-Jew. How could that be? So the Rebbe answers very simply. A guy cannot go against the will of Hashem unless if it's in the 7 mitzvahs. In the 7 Noahide laws, because they're commanded to do it, then they have the free choice, because if there's no free choice, there cannot be reward and punishment. So the Rebbe explains, in the 7 Noahide laws, a guy does have free choice. And therefore, but in anything else, a guy has no free choice. So therefore, the Rebbe explains like this. Bilam says, I can't go against, because for a guy to curse a Jew is not biblically forbidden. It's not one of the 7 Noahide laws. Technically, a guy is allowed to curse a Jew. And therefore, Bilam said, I can't. Yet, when it came to the mitzvahs he was obligated to do, and he had free choice, so Bilam taka sinned. He was a Rasha. He sinned. But here the Alter Rebbe is explaining why a person who sins is worse than the evil that he's sinning with. You're sinning by eating non-kosher. The non-kosher is evil. It's complete evil. Yet, when you sin with it, the person becomes worse and inferior and secondary and subjugated to the evil that he committed. So therefore, you can understand the terrible Okay, I just was looking for the English word subordinate to the evil. So therefore, the person who sins is even worse. And he says, even though l'cha'era, evil is called idol worshiping, what could be worse than that? Nevertheless, they still say God is the God of the gods. They say God exists, but there are other gods also. But the God is the God of the gods, which for a non-Jew is allowed. For evil is allowed. And therefore, the evil cannot transgress the will of Hashem. They can't. They cannot go against the will of Hashem. Because they know, they understand God, he said. They know that this is the existence and the life. That they're getting their nourishment from the evil side of Achorayim Shodotz and Elyon, the external level of God, Hamakif Alem, that surrounds them. Meaning like this: evil knows where its nourishment is. It knows it exists from God. Yes, over the shoulder, it's not God smiling at them, it's not God revealing his essence to them. It's very external. It's over the shoulder. That, like you said before, we learned Elokim Achedim, because it's getting, God is sustaining them, because that's not what he really wants. God doesn't really want evil's existence. It's not that evil is only a means. Why did God create evil? We learned because evil is a means for good to be good. Meaning, in order for good to be good, I need the opportunity and the ability to do evil. Because if I cannot do evil, I'm programmed like an angel only to do good. so then there's no concept of reward and punishment. I'm programmed to do good. Of course I have to do good. The uniqueness is when a person has the ability to sin and he doesn't, that's the greatness of the person. Okay? So he's saying that evil understands exactly where its nourishment is. And they don't rebel against God. They do exactly what Hashem wants to do it. And therefore, when Hashem created evil, it's not called the real will. We learned the real purpose. The real purpose of creation is neshamis, good, kedusha. That's what Hashem wants. But in order for kedusha to exist, there has to be evil. But that's only the external will of Hashem. And they understand that evil knows where they come from. They know they come from the external level of Hashem that encompasses above them. And they also know that the lifeline of Hashem that gives them sustenance is exiled. The godliness that's in them is exiled. To think they're God. So that's kfira b'achtusik. That would be denying God. But they're not denying God's existence completely. Let me explain this like this. When a person sins, at that moment, they're denying, and people say, oh, it's not true. But in reality, it's true. When a person sins, they actually deny the existence of God. Why? So now Rabbi is going to soon ask, how is that possible? Because if you would realize God is omnipresent, God is standing right in front of you, and he says, don't do it, and you still do it, you're basically denying the existence of God. You're saying, God, you're not here now. I can do it. If you would feel God is watching you, you would never sin. Nobody would sin if they know, like we mentioned, Rabbi Yechanan Zake, when his children and his students, and when Rabbi Yechanan Zake was on his deathbed, he lived 120 years. He was on his deathbed. And the students said to him, Rabbi, give us advice before you go. And he said, Yehiratzin, may it be the will of God, that you should fear Hashem as much as you fear a human being. Listen to what he said. You should fear God as much as you fear a human being. And his disciples were shocked. They said to him, that's it? He said, Halavai, it should only be that way. And he explained. I'll paraphrase it. When you know a cop is watching you, you're not going to go through the red light. When you know the policeman is watching, you're not going to rob a bank. Because you know, you have fear, you know they're going to get caught. He says, at least, obviously Hashem is infinitely greater than a human being watching you. But at least fear Hashem like you would a human being. If a human being watching, Rabbi said, you're not going to do it. You're not going to sin. At least pretend Hashem is the same thing. Therefore, when a person does sin, they're basically denying completely the existence of Hashem. They're not saying the food is good and God is the God of the food, or, there's a God of the gods. They're denying completely the existence of God. Evil does not feel godliness. It will deny godliness, but they don't deny God's existence completely. They know that they get their nourishment from evil, from God. They get it from the external levels of God, but they know they exist. They tell a story. There was once a Balagola wagon driver driving a great rabbi in the carriage. And meanwhile, they passed a luscious orchard. And the Balagola was a simple person. He wasn't a very great tzaddik. He was a very simple person. He had a strong desire to take off some fruits and eat them, which is basically called stealing in English. So he was afraid to, just to go. So he tells the rabbi, he was a very fine gentleman. He says to the rabbi, I'm going to steal some fruits, and you stand by and you scream if somebody's watching, say in Yiddish, Mizat, Mizat, we see. So he went down to the orchard. He was about to take some fruits, steal them off the tree. The rabbi screamed, Mizat, Mizat, they're watching. He got scared, the balagala, the wagon driver. He ran back to the wagon. He looks around, nobody's there. He says to the rabbi, who's watching? He said, what do you mean who's watching? God is watching. You want me to tell you who's watching when you steal? God is watching. So he says, but when a person sins, they're basically denying completely the existence of God. And therefore, the Alter Rebbe is explaining they're even worse than the evil. You know, you have sometimes when kids misbehave, as students misbehave, years ago, today it doesn't matter anything, everything goes. But the teacher would tell the student, you know, okay, other kids do it, but from you, I didn't expect it. You know, a parent tells the kid, from you, I don't expect it. In other words, you are on a greater level. You're more refined. You behave better. Why are you lowering yourself to a level that's beneath you? And that's exactly what happens to an infinite worse level when a person doesn't have it. They're denying the existence of Hashem. And they say, therefore, evil never rebels against Hashem. Never. But, therefore, a person transgresses the will of Hashem, meaning he had the free choice not to. They didn't have any free choice. A pig is a pig because it's a pig, and he doesn't have a free choice to be evil or not evil. But to Garua Pachas Harbe Ma'id is much worse and much lower, infinitely more. Worse than the evil that's called idol worshipping. And this person who sins, and again, it's the contrast. Just like in good, we are connected to the essence of Hashem. When a person does evil, they are disconnected from Hashem, and they are totally connected, worse than evil itself is. And and then you are denying, the person who sins is denying the existence of God, even worse than the evil. And he says, like the Eitz Chaim, the Arizal writes in Sham Beis Parak Dalid, he writes over there as follows: Shahara Sheba'olam Hazeh, Sheba'olam Hazeh HaChumri, that the evil in this world, who Shmarei HaKlipas Hagasis, the evil that exists in the world is only the sediment of the real evil that a person brings into the world. Therefore, all the actions of this world are hard and evil, and the Shem given by the evil are prosperous and victorious in the world. Somebody asked a very interesting question. I'm going to answer it now because it's relevant to what we're learning. Why Hashem punishes if someone didn't do a mitzvah b'simcha? What's the difference? And this exactly is what we're learning now, by the way. When a person does a mitzvah, we learned that you connect to the essence of God. Connect to Hashem. The question is, how can a finite person connect the infinite essence of Hashem? How could it be? Mathematically, it doesn't work out. The only answer is, and that's why we learned many times, the concept of Yetzias Mitzrayim, the Exodus from Egypt, is fundamental in Yiddishkeit. What is Yetzias Mitzrayim? Leaving your boundaries. It's not only the physical Egypt. Mitzrayim means boundaries and limitations. Like we learned in the 15th chapter. If you learn 100 times a day and that's your nature, you're not serving God. Because A finite being cannot reach the infinite God. If this is your nature, that's finite. That's limited. You want to reach the infinite God, you have to break your barriers of limitation. How does a person break the barriers of limitation? So before we learn in Perek Tezvav, the 15th chapter, the Alter Rebbe explains, what the Gemara says in Chagiga, that instead of learning 100 times, you learn it 101 times. That's breaking your nature, going out of your limitations, and then you could reach the infinite. That is exactly what simcha causes. The Gemara says an expression, simcha peretz geder. Simcha breaks boundaries. When a person has a real simcha, they're marrying off a kid, or whatever it is, they have a tremendous simcha. They will do things that they normally don't do. They will act crazy, let's say, they will dance crazily at a wedding that they normally wouldn't, you wouldn't catch them dead doing it. Simcha breaks barriers, like you'd see a Mitzrayim. So when a person does a mitzvah, no matter what the mitzvah is, besimcha, what they're actually doing is they're fulfilling the mitzvah, breaking their barriers, and that allows them to reach the infinite, that without it, yes, they connect to the essence, but they're not going to be felt. They won't feel it. Simcha is so vital in Yiddishkeit that it says all the curses come upon the Jewish people because they don't serve Hashem besimcha. Because that's the importance of simcha. Exactly to do a mitzvah, breaking your barrier by being happy, and then you reach the infinite. Here, the Alter Rebbe is speaking in the negativity of it. When you sin, then you're completely bound to evil more than the evil itself. And that's a terrible thing. So next week in Mitzvah Shem, we'll learn, so how can a person that was a neshama come to that level? How could he do such a thing that makes him worse than evil? And the Alter Rebbe is going to explain how it's very simple, how it's possible for it to happen. Anyway, everybody have a great week. The rest of the week, have a great Shabbos. Mitzvah Shem, I know tonight there was a wedding and a challah bake and different things going on. But in Mitzvah Shem, Monday night, 8 o'clock. Hope to see you all. Tell your friends. And everybody have a good Shabbos.